So what I wanted to show you in this last video about the project is that we can actually create our own modules and export something from them, like for example a function, then import this function into another module and then use that function there. Okay, and so that is what we're going to do in this lecture. So let's say that we actually had a bunch of different JavaScript files in which we used this replace template function. So right now we are just using it here in index.js. We use it twice, and that is why we have a function. But imagine that we wanted to use this function in multiple files, okay? So what we can do is to create a new module and export that function from it and then import it back here. So the first thing that you need to know is that in Node.js, actually every single file is treated as a module, okay? And so this index.js here actually is also a module, which in this case imports other modules, and particularly these three. So let's now create a new folder here, which I'm going to call modules. And then in here, I'm going to create a file, which will be our module called replaceTemplate.js. Okay, so let's grab our function here, actually cut it out from here, and simply paste it here. All right, now how do we actually export this function from this module? Well, there are different ways of exporting something from a module, and we're going to talk in depth about all of this in another section later on. But for now, all we're going to do is to use module.exports. Okay, so in each module, we have access to a variable called module, and on there, we can set the export property. And that we then set to whatever we want to export. In this case, that is just this function. So we're going to get rid of this name. And so basically what we're going to assign to this exports property on module is simply this anonymous function, right? So I said anonymous because right now this function does not have any name. And so it's just an anonymous function that we assigned to this export property on the module object. Again, that is an object that we have access to in each and every Node.js module. All right. And again, later on, you'll learn how that actually happens behind the scenes. But for now, let's just use it and don't worry about why it works this way. So this exports this function from the module. Let's now go to index.js and import it. And imports usually always happen at the top of the file and after the core modules. So first we have the core modules, and then we have our own modules. Now we will do require, and then our own module, which is dot. And remember that in the require function, the dot actually means the current location of this module. Okay, so remember when we talked about the dar name variable here, which is usually the one that points to the modules folder. But in this case, in the require function, remember, there is an exception where this dot actually points to the location where this module is in. And so right now, that is this root folder here. And so from here, we go to modules. And then in there, we have replace template. And again, just as with the other modules, we don't need the .js. Okay, now that is going to return what we exported here with module.exports. Okay, so what we have here, this code, this function, is what will be exported from this require function call. And so we can now save that into a variable and give it any name that we want. So we could just call it x if we wanted, or really whatever we wanted. But instead, I'm just giving it this name that we already had here so that I don't have to change my code here. So replace template is the name that I want to give to this variable, which is now this function. And just like this, we exported something from one module and imported it into another one. Okay, and so if we now restart our server, everything should still be working, but it actually does not. We have some kind of error here. And it says it cannot find the module, and that's because I was stupid enough to call this folder here modules.js. So I'm sorry for that. This one is, of course, only supposed to be called modules. Okay, and that's why it wasn't giving me the autocomplete here. I was wondering why that was, and now we know. So if it doesn't work for you, just change the name here of this folder, and then everything should match and work as it should. So let's reload, and it still replaces everything as it should. The same here, of course. And so, yeah, we're now done with this project. So congratulations, well done, and you're well on your way of learning Node.js. Now in the rest of the section, we're going to talk a little bit about the Node Package Manager, or NPM. And so we're going to keep working a little bit with this project, but not really adding any functionality. Anyway, see you in the next video where we're going to start talking about NPM.